Welcome back to today's video. In today's video, I'm taking a look at a 2024 prediction between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Let's go right into today's video. All right, welcome back to today's video. Taking a look here at some of the polling data. Now, the general election polling data is currently showing the former president with a maintaining lead over Joe Biden by 1.2%. We have been seeing more recently that Donald Trump has been maintaining a lead. He did go down for quite some time in which many have called a Joe Biden surge for quite some time, but then he rebounded back up to around 1.2%. When we take a look here at some polls in the particular swing states in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump has rebounded and is now in the lead. We saw that for quite a while, Joe Biden was in the lead in mid-April, although more recently, Donald Trump has been maintaining a lead in the swing state of Pennsylvania, a crucial swing state for him, and we're going to get into that in a second, because taking a look at this here, if Donald Trump were to win Georgia, which is extremely likely that he would win Georgia, and he would also win North Carolina, which is also extremely likely, if Donald Trump were to win Pennsylvania, that would get him to 269. 269 is almost enough, assuming that he wins Maine's 1st congressional district. Now, Maine's 1st congressional district, North Carolina, and Georgia are extremely likely states for Donald Trump to take. I would say that they're, in terms of the swing states, they are extremely likely for Donald Trump to win. So he's almost guaranteed to win those states. And then if you give Donald Trump the state of Pennsylvania, he's basically already at the number of electoral votes he needs, 270 electoral votes. We have been taking a look at Pennsylvania for quite some time, and only now, more recently, we are seeing that Donald Trump is ahead by approximately 1.8%. Again, Joe Biden was ahead in mid-April. We did see that Donald Trump's national polling data did slump during mid-April, although it has rebounded for the most part. Take a look at some other polls here in the state of Wisconsin. The state of Wisconsin, Trump's currently leading by 0.5%. Taking a look at most of these polls, you could see that for quite some time it was pretty tight. It was going back and forth between Trump and Biden. Although more recently, Trump is in the lead. It was at around 1.8% in the beginning of May, although now it's around 0.5%. Although then again, the polls are going back and forth. And for the most part, Trump is in the lead. Although you could see the possibility that Joe Biden might end up leading in the state of Wisconsin by possibly the end of May. Moving on here to the state of Arizona, Trump's currently ahead by 5.0%. He's obviously ahead by a relatively large margin. He has been ahead by around the same margin, basically the entire race since about November, around that time, November of 2023, Trump has been in the lead. Also in the state of Georgia, Trump is ahead by 3.8%. Now, he was ahead by bigger margins previously. In fact, at one point in February, mid-February, he was ahead by around 7%. Although now more recently, he's only ahead by around 3.8%. So it has been a shrinking lead for the former president. In the state of Michigan, Trump is currently ahead by 1.2%, a swing state that is extremely crucial to him. At one point, he was leading by around 5.3%, although now that margin has gone down to only 1.2%. Moving on to the state of Nevada, Trump's currently ahead by 4.5%. In fact, it is very interesting that Trump is ahead in the state of Nevada by a larger margin than he is in the state of Georgia. Trump is ahead in Nevada by around 4.5%, whereas in Georgia, he's ahead by only 3.8%. But taking a look at this, Trump is currently ahead by 4.8%. He was ahead by larger margins previously, although at this point, he currently is headed 4.5% in the state of Nevada. North Carolina, a state which Donald Trump is most likely to win, he's ahead by 5.4% in this particular state. And we are seeing that for most of the polling data, he has been ahead in this particular state. All right, moving on here to some other polls here. Taking a look here at some Joe Biden approval rating polls. Joe Biden's approval rating is basically behind in almost every single state. You can take a look at each individual state. For example, here we have Alabama. Here we have Alaska, going down here through all of these states. Let me just zoom in a little bit to some of these polls really quick. All right, there. So that should be zoomed enough. But taking a look at most of these polls here, you could see that it lists the state and the approval rating on average that Joe Biden has. Now, what this polling data does is it takes the two polls, takes the approval rating, the percent of approval rating, and the disapproval rating, and basically subtracts them. So wherever you see a negative, that means that Joe Biden's approval rating is actually the amount of people who approve of Joe Biden is less than the amount of people who disapprove of Joe Biden in terms of the percentages in each individual state. He's behind in Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California. You can see each of these margins: Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Idaho. In fact, it's really interesting. In Georgia, he's behind in his approval rating by 17.7%. In Florida, 18%, which is very interesting, by the way, that Florida and Georgia are very close, even though in terms of the approval rating to disapproval rating, even though Georgia is considered less of a swing state, more of a swing state rather, compared to the state of Florida, which is not really much of a swing state. Idaho, obviously, these types of states will be extremely interesting. But another one to take into consideration here, Illinois. Illinois is extremely interesting. Biden's approval rating is behind by around 4% in the state of Illinois. In the state of Illinois, Biden's behind by around 4%. His disapproval rating is 46%. Approval rating is 42%. So even in the state of Illinois, which by the way was the state that Barack Obama was from, he was obviously a senator in that particular state. Not from that state, but he was from Hawaii, although he was a senator in that state. He's behind by 4%. Obviously not Barack Obama, but this is Joe Biden. But Joe Biden was the running mate of Barack Obama, and Joe Biden won this state by a pretty big margin in 2020. Indiana, obviously. Iowa, obviously. Biden's going to be behind. But let's take a look here at some more important states. Maryland, Biden's ahead, although, I mean, it's hard for a Democrat to be behind in Maryland. Massachusetts, again, Biden, I think, won in that state by around 30 points, but he's only ahead by around 4% in his approval rating to disapproval rating. And then in the state of Michigan, Biden's behind by 17% in these particular swing states. In Minnesota, 15.3%. Mississippi, obviously, is going to be behind there. Missouri, Montana, Nebraska. Nevada, 22% almost. New Hampshire is interesting. New Hampshire, he's only behind by around 14%, which is not so bad. It's pretty good for him. In the state of New Jersey, he's behind by 6.5%. 6.5% in the state of New Jersey. This is a very interesting poll. Biden's behind in his approval rating by 6.5%. New Mexico, 4.4%. Very interesting here. New York, Biden's behind by 5.4% there. North Carolina, obviously, Biden's behind. North Dakota, don't even talk about that. Biden's approval rating is 20%, and his disapproval rating is 70%. Ohio, he's behind in, obviously. Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania behind by around 20 points. Rhode Island, he's behind by 6%. In Rhode Island, is a state that he won. He won by a good margin in the state of Rhode Island. South Carolina, obviously, is going to be behind there. Texas is interesting. His disapproval rating in Texas is actually higher. Sorry, his approval rating in Texas is actually higher than his approval rating in Pennsylvania. So that's very interesting. So Joe Biden's approval rating in Texas is higher than Pennsylvania. That is extremely, extremely interesting. Very interesting poll there. Utah, obviously, is going to be behind there. Vermont, Virginia, he's behind by 13 points. Washington, he's ahead by 1 point, which, again, you can't derive too much from these polls in terms of the head-to-head matchup. He's ahead in Washington by 1%, yet he's ahead in Maryland by, I think, around 4%, which is very interesting since Maryland is much more Democrat than Washington. So, again, these polls aren't entirely representative, but just scrolling through these here, West Virginia, he's behind by around, West Virginia, very interesting here, 47.4%. Obviously, Joe Manchin is the senator in that state. He's obviously going out in the next election. Obviously, he's not running for re-election. Wisconsin, behind by 16.4%. Wyoming, that was our last state, negative 53%. So that is, those are those particular states. Anyways, guys, that is for those particular states. Taking a look at some head-to-head Trump versus Biden matchups in these particular states, we're going to go ahead and take a look here at the state of Virginia. Biden's ahead by 4.3% in the state of Virginia, an extremely important state. Joe Biden will end up winning, obviously, in the state of Virginia. Another state which isn't going to be important is the state, it is going to be important, it's the state of Minnesota. Polls have not been taken in the state for quite some time. It has been pretty stagnant. Joe Biden's been in the lead by 2.3% in the state of Minnesota. We're going to take a look here at some polls in New York. Some people are interested in speculating into New York, seeing how the polls are going around in that particular state. Biden is ahead by around 10% in some polls there. Even in some polls, he's ahead by as low as 7%. Some polls as high as even 21%. So some very interesting polls there in the state. Sorry about that. In the state of Pennsylvania. All right, so that is for the state of Pennsylvania. Taking a look here at the state of California. Very interesting here. California, Joe Biden does much better than compared to New York. He's ahead by an average of 21% there. In terms of some other polls here, just taking a look at some of the other ones that are going to be extremely interesting. Texas, obviously an extremely interesting one. Texas and Florida. People are kind of putting Texas and Florida at around the same column. Texas, Trump's ahead by 9.3%, which, by the way, if he wins by 9.3%, that is higher than his 2020 margin, which is extremely interesting there. In the state of Ohio, currently, Trump's leading by around 10%. Trump's leading in the state of Ohio by a larger margin in Texas, according to RCP polling. Take a look here at the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis state here. Trump's ahead by around 9%, won it by around 3.8% in the 2020 election. Some people are saying that it's going less towards the red. Following the 2022 midterms, it's going more towards the blue. I will agree with that to a certain extent. I do think that Ron DeSantis running for president did lower his approval rating, and that did affect his popularity in that particular state. Now let's take a look here at some other states here that might be of interest to you. Colorado. These are just some states that might be interesting to you. 6.5% in the state of Colorado. That's not good news for Joe Biden. I think he's going to still win in that state, although he won by around 14% in 2020. Now he's only ahead by 6.5%. Indiana here, taking a look at some polls here from Indiana, former Vice President Mike Pence. Trump's ahead by around 21%. Obviously, also, we're going to look at the state of New Mexico. Biden's ahead. If you average these polls, he's ahead by around 8% there in the state of New Mexico, which is still pretty good for him. 8% is, I believe, around the margin that he won in 2020. He won it by around 9%. But those are for some of those particular states that may be of importance to you. Now, I don't think we have any polling data for Maine's second. I don't know. We might have polling data. Yeah, Maine's second congressional district. Trump's leading by around 20 points and 14 points, which means that he will most likely win that congressional district, which means that if Trump wins Maine's second congressional district, let's say he wins it by a safe margin, or maybe let's say a likely margin, but let's say by a safe margin, and then he given the state of Nevada, which currently, if you look at the polling data, Trump's ahead by around 4.5% in the state of Nevada. Georgia, Trump's ahead by around 3.8%. So if you give Trump, let's say, the state of Nevada, and you give him the state of Georgia as well, Trump's already at 241. You give Trump the state of North Carolina, you have Trump ahead by 5.4% according to RCP's aggregate. Trump's at 257 electoral votes. Then you just give him the state of Pennsylvania, he would get to 270. You give him the state of Michigan, he's at 270. If you give him Arizona, which is going to be a problem for Donald Trump, if he wins the state of Arizona, it's not necessarily going to be the best for him. I mean, it's good if he wins Arizona in terms of getting to 270. Although that being said, if he wins the entire Sun Belt states, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and I don't know if North Carolina is a Sun Belt state, but if he wins the Sun Belt, excluding New Mexico, he's at 268. Assuming he wins Maine's for second congressional district. I put that wrong there. Second congressional district. That in that situation, he would have to win Nebraska's second congressional district, which would put him at 269 electoral votes. If he gets 269 electoral votes, he's immediately at a 269 tie there. In the Electoral College, it would go to the House of Representatives. Assuming the House of Representatives is controlled by Republicans, he would end up winning in that particular scenario. But that is for those particular states there. Another situation here to consider here is obviously Joe Biden's potential path to 270. Well, Joe Biden, he could win Nevada. He could win not Nevada. Let's go ahead and give Joe Biden the state of Pennsylvania. He's not that behind of Trump in Pennsylvania. If you look at the polling data, he's only behind by around 1.8% in the state of Pennsylvania. 1.8%. So you give him that state, he's at 221. You also give him the state of Virginia and Minnesota, he's at 244. He needs another about 26 electoral votes. So at that point, you can give him the state of, let's say, Michigan. If you give him the state of Michigan there, he's at 259. Then you give him the state of Arizona, he's at 270. Or he could just go ahead and win the entire Rust Belt. If he wins the entire Rust Belt, he's at 269. Assuming he wins Maine's second congressional district, that would put him at 270, which that is a possibility that he could win that particular congressional district. So that is another situation for Joe Biden. In terms of all of these situations, which one would be most likely? If I were to look at the electoral map right now, I would probably say the easiest way for Joe Biden to reach 270 is by winning Wisconsin, winning Michigan, and winning Pennsylvania, along with winning Nebraska's second congressional district. I could see him possibly flipping Nevada, although currently he's behind by around 5.4% in that particular state, and he really has to bring it home if he wants to win in that particular state, in the state of Nevada. Nevada is going to be crucial to Joe Biden because if he wins the Rust Belt, he needs Nevada desperately because he can't really rely on Nebraska's second congressional district due to the fact that after redistricting measures that took place after the 2020 election, you did see that it included some more rural areas, and due to the fact that district now included more rural areas, it is more likely to go to the former president than it did in 2020, even though Joe Biden won in that particular district by around 6%. So that is an extremely, extremely important district. But currently, Trump, in terms of the popular vote, that is another thing to consider. A lot of people are saying that Biden will end up winning the popular vote. I don't necessarily think so. I think Trump's going to end up winning the popular vote. If you go back to around 2020 here, just 2020 and even 2016, So if you go back to 2020 and 2016 here, taking a look at some polling data, you see that in the final polls, Biden was ahead by around 7.2% in the popular vote, according to most of the polls, yet he only ended up winning by 4.5%, which means that the polls overestimated then former Vice President Joe Biden by approximately 2.7%. If he gets overestimated by that margin, you could see potentially Trump winning the popular vote by around 3 to 4%. Hillary Clinton in 2016, which by the way, that was a long time ago, that was about almost 8 years ago. Um, Hillary Clinton was in the final polls. She was ahead by around 3.2%. She got overestimated by 1%. So both 2016 and 2020, you see that the Democrat was overestimated by around 1 to 2.5%. Currently, Trump's ahead by 1.2%. I know that those polls have been shifting. Biden was in the lead. If you go back to August 2023, Biden was in the lead. Also, if you go back to March 2020, 2022, 2023, around that timeline. Now you might be thinking, oh, August of 2023 was a long time ago. That was about 8 months ago or so. Well, you got to remember the election is in about 6 months, so the polls could change before the election. But even if they do change and Biden is leading Trump by maybe around 1%, that still could give Trump the popular vote due to the fact that he was underestimated in 2020 in terms of the popular vote. So I do think Trump has a good shot of winning the popular vote. Let me go ahead right now and give you my prediction. So currently, I have Trump winning Nevada, Arizona. I have him winning Georgia, and I have him winning North Carolina. I would have him winning Georgia by a lean margin, Nevada by a lean margin, North Carolina by a lean margin. I also see him winning the state of Wisconsin by a tilt margin, Michigan by a tilt margin, and Pennsylvania by a tilt margin as well. Let's go ahead and give Trump also both congressional districts, Nebraska, 2nd Congressional District, and Maine's 2nd Congressional District as well. So that being said, we have Donald Trump at 313 electoral votes and Joe Biden 225. Now let's take a look here at the particular other states. Some of the other states, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, some of the other states here, Texas, Florida, kind of categorizing them as being likely or safe. Let's go ahead and start with Texas. I know we did look at some polls here in the state of Texas, but let's just take a look here at some more polls in the state of Texas. So let's go back here a little bit. And let's go ahead and take a look at some polls in the state of Texas. We already looked at some of these polls, but currently Trump's ahead by 9.3% in the state of Texas, and also in the state of Florida, Trump's ahead by, I believe, 10%. Sorry, 9%. Yeah, 9%. So if you go ahead and put these states, I'm going to categorize them as being likely for the former president. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the state of Ohio. The state of Ohio, extremely interesting state for Donald Trump to win, which he will end up winning most likely. He's ahead by around 10%, so we will go ahead and put it as being likely. The state of Iowa. The state of Iowa is an extremely, extremely crucial state for Donald Trump to win. He's ahead currently by 11.5%, which I will categorize as being safe. Iowa is more conservative compared to the state of Ohio. When you look at the state of Ohio actually voted to give abortion rights to women in the state of Ohio, whereas in the state of Iowa, they actually ended up restricting abortion rights in the state of Iowa. So that is extremely important and crucial, considering that is a much more conservative state. So moving on here, we're going to go on with our next state here. Let's go ahead and take a look at I believe we went through a majority of them. Let's take a look here at the state of Washington, because CNN recently, not recently, but they released it a while ago. They currently had, I believe, Oregon or Washington. Let's go take a look at this. Washington, or I think Oregon, they had it as being likely for Joe Biden, not safe. Currently, if you look at most of the polling data, Biden's ahead by around 10.3%, around that margin. Now, I know that you might be thinking that, these polls were taken obviously a long time ago, but I don't think that Donald Trump's going to win in the state of Oregon. I think it's extremely unlikely. When you look at Joe Biden's approval rating in the state of Oregon, let's just take a look at this really quick. I don't believe that it's in a very good position. Joe Biden's approval rating in the state of Oregon here. Let's take a look at this. Let's go down a little bit and let's get that approval rating. So if you look at the state of Oregon, he's currently behind by 3%. 3%, his approval rating is 45%. Disapproval rating is 48%. I think that is a pretty likely state for Joe Biden to win. It has voted consistently Democrat for quite some time, and I don't think it's a state that the Republicans have any chance of winning. All right. So that is for that particular state. And that will kind of not finish this video. Let's take a look here at the state of, I just realized this, the state of Colorado. Colorado, 6.5%, he's ahead, and 6.5% is not a lot, guys. I gotta be telling you that 6.5% is not a lot whatsoever. I'm gonna go ahead and put it as being in the likely column in the state of New Mexico. I do believe he's ahead by, let's just take a look at this here. I believe he's ahead by around 8%, I believe, in the state of New Mexico. I believe around 8%. Yeah, 8%. Around 8% if you average those polls. So 8%, I'll put that in the likely column for Joe Biden. Also, the state of Minnesota and Virginia, let's take a look at some polls there. So for Minnesota, taking a look at some of these polls, Biden's currently ahead by 2.3% in the state of Minnesota. So let's go ahead and put that state as being in the tilt column. And also, we'll go ahead and give Joe Biden the state of Virginia. Obviously, he's going to win that state, but by how much of a margin is the real question. He's ahead by around 4.3%, which I will put in the lean column. All right, so in the lean column there. So this is a prediction currently, my current prediction, along with the associated margins here in the solid, likely, lean, and tilt columns. Donald Trump at 213 electoral votes, Joe Biden at 225 electoral votes. Guys, if you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and like this video. It's really helpful if you're able to hit that subscribe button down below. And also, I'm going to put Rhode Island as being safe. So Rhode Island is being safe. But if you like this video, make sure to subscribe button down below. I know the prediction obviously might change as the election draws near. We are almost 6 months removed from the election. And obviously, we're going to be ramping up these videos as they're coming along. Sorry for not posting last week. I was unable to post last week. But next week, I will be able to post along with this week as well. But thanks for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe button down below and like the video. We're on a goal to reaching 1,000 subscribers pretty soon. So make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. And I'll see you in the next one.